Hannah was a popular teen with a large group of friends. One of her closest friends was a boy that is named in the court documents as only LM, so we'll call him Lance. Lance and Hannah were good friends and hung out together quite a bit, usually at Hannah's mom's place. Lance didn't have the best of childhood backgrounds. His parents, according to court documents, I would classify them as pretty much absent. But he did have the support of his grandparents. He was an okay student and working at Tim Hortons, where coworkers describe him as having a good work ethic. His mom was often unemployed, so he was working at Tim's to basically help support the family. And because of that, he could only attend school about 2 or 3 times a week. So he didn't have the honor roll grades that Hannah had, but seemed to Janet to be an okay kid. Hannah was 14 in October of 2013, and Lance introduced Hannah to his friend Skylar Prockner. And herein lies part of the issue. Lance was friends with Hannah, but he was also friends with Skylar. During the time between October 2013 and May of 2014, Hannah and Skylar and Lance and his girlfriend, which we'll call her Veronica, hung out together and all was good. But by May of 2014, Hannah started to see some red flags with Skylar that bothered her about him. She started to see a very possessive and jealous side to Skylar that really bugged her. I don't know that she had enough experience to be afraid of Skylar, but she definitely wanted the relationship to be over. When Hannah broke things off with Skylar, immediately there were issues that Skylar wasn't taking it very well. He started the usual barrage of pleading and angry text messages and snap Twitter book passive-aggressive status updates. The whole gamut. He would drive by her house squealing the tires. He continued to harass her at school even though he had dropped out soon after the breakup, and once came right up to her front door and with a hammer proceeded to smash a gift that he had received from her. But Hannah always tried to see the best in people and didn't pursue a restraining order or anything like that. However, Hannah's mom, Janet, did try reaching out to Skylar's mom and telling her that if he didn't stop, she would call the police, but I'm not able to confirm how that conversation went. Things at one point were so bad that Skylar was hospitalized a couple of months after the breakup in psychiatric care. And of course, he's taking this time to vent and rage to his friends about the breakup, going between I can't live without her to I hate her so much. Skylar, it turns out, had a rough mental health background and not exactly the best of parenting situations. When he was only 6 years old, Child and Youth Services became involved because one of his teachers was concerned because he was talking about killing himself and his friends, as well as telling his teacher on a couple of occasions that he wanted to be a serial killer when he grew up. Skylar's mom was informed of this and told the teacher, quote, if he wants to be a Chippendale dancer or serial killer, I will support my kid. So maybe not the best parenting happening for Skylar. On September 15th, 2014, about 4 months after Hannah dumped him, he called his dad from the garage of his house to tell him that he had everything set up to kill himself and had written suicide notes to him and Hannah. As a result of that, he was admitted to the adolescent psychiatric unit at the Regina hospital, where he stayed until September 24th. But once he was discharged, he only attended one of the follow-up appointments set up for him with Child and Youth Services and completely skipped his follow-up with his psychiatrist. On November 7th, 2014, Skylar's mom made a call to Child and Youth Services because Skylar was again not attending school and was being disrespectful and not following her rules. So they made an appointment for her, Skylar, and his dad to come in 3 days later, but no one showed up to that appointment either. After his release from the hospital, Skylar never returned to school and was just really doing nothing with his time other than brooding about his breakup with Hannah. Now, obviously, Skylar was blocked from Hannah's Facebook page, but continued to creep her page through mutual friends' posts. And lo and behold, what does he see in September of 2014 but pictures of Hannah with a new boyfriend that we'll call Scott? On September 21st, Skylar Facebook messages his friend Sasha. I'm not going to bore you with the dramatic details of all of it, but basically Skylar tells Sasha that thoughts of killing Hannah occupy his mind almost all of the time. Sasha, for whatever reason, rather than being concerned, just says that she'll happily kick her ass for him. And the conversation ends with this little tidbit. So then in the fall of 2014, Skylar enlists the help of Lance's brother Trevor and Tavon, some of whom are real names and some of them are made up. They come up with a plan they call Project Zombify, in which Lance would try to lure Hannah's new boyfriend Scott to behind the elementary school referred to as the attack zone, and then Skylar, Tavon, and Trevor would proceed to beat him up or possibly go so far as to kill him. Skylar even went so far as to buy masks for him and his friends to wear, hammered a bunch of nails into his baseball bat to make a weapon of it, and covered his shoes with duct tape to make sure he wouldn't leave footprints, and put the mask, sunglasses, and hats into a backpack to be ready. They were going to do it on Halloween, a day of Reese's peanut butter cups and Twizzlers for me, but for Skylar, a good day for murder. He made it known with his group of friends that Hanna wasn't the target, but she may have to be collateral damage if she tried to intervene. Skylar considered knocking her out with chloroform, but as Casey Anthony discovered in her Google searches, that isn't easy to find and figured some paint thinner would have to do the trick. As luck would have it for Scott, Hanna and him broke up near the end of October, and Project Zombify did not go forth. But Skylar did start to tell his friends that he wanted to cut the brake lines on Hanna's car. But fortunately, no one did that for him. So with Scott now out of the way, Skylar started up again asking, or rather demanding, that Hanna and him get back together. But she was a smart girl and wasn't having none of it and had moved on gracefully and wasn't going to get back with him. At this point, he is still venting to Lance, who, you will remember, was Hanna's friend, but they had started to drift apart, likely a result of Skylar and his demands for loyalty. And throughout the rest of 2014, Skylar continued to stalk Hanna, creating a fake Facebook account to keep tabs on her and enlisting the help of his friends. He requested that Tavon take the same driver's ed class that she was taking to report back to Skylar on Hanna, and Lance was told to start being Hanna's friend again so that he could also keep tabs on her. Lance was happy to oblige, and one time him and Veronica actually went to Hanna's place to watch movies and play video games with Hanna. On January 12, 2015, Skylar opened his fake Facebook account and saw some pictures of Hanna looking happy and carefree with a new boyfriend. After all, Hanna had moved on and was a pretty and popular girl. Skylar did not feel the same way and became absolutely enraged in that moment, at 1 a.m. to be exact, and possibly the worst time for making any life choices. He made the decision then that Hanna had to die, and he was going to kill her. The next day, it didn't take a lot of convincing for Skylar to enlist the help of Lance. That morning, he texted Lance the following exchange. Lance had actually made plans the day before with his girlfriend Veronica to celebrate their 6-month anniversary, a very teenage thing to do, but he called their plans off to help Skylar. They waited in the truck parked near Hannah's house for her to arrive home from school, both slumping down in the seats to not be seen. When they saw Hanna arriving home around 3:30 and going into the side door off the kitchen, Skylar told Lance to stay in the truck and be a lookout, but Lance insisted on coming with him. Both Lance and Skylar were carrying a knife on them. Skylar entered in the unlocked side door with Lance behind him. Seconds upon entering, Hanna spotted Skylar and screamed, and immediately ran towards her parents' bedroom, hoping to get to a phone or at least a door that she could lock. Only she tripped on her way into the doorway of the bedroom, and Skylar jumped on her and began to rapidly stab her repeatedly. Lance enters the bedroom behind Skylar, and there are debates about to which degree he participated in Hanna's murder. When Hanna stopped moving, they left the room, grabbing Hanna's cell phone on the way out, and they both got back into Skylar's dad's truck and drove to Veronica's house. During the stabbing, Skylar had cut his left hand and it needed stitches. Skylar and Lance got to Veronica's around 3:45, and she wasn't home yet from school, so they waited, and when Veronica got home at 4, she was surprised to see both of them waiting outside her house, since their plans had been canceled and the plans they did have did not include Skylar. She later testified that Lance was fidgety, jumpy, and aggravated. Skylar made up some story about hurting his hand while hunting, which is kind of unlikely, seeing that it was still actively bleeding and it was an odd time of day for hunting. Veronica tried to help with bandaging Skylar's hand, but it was pretty clear it needed stitches, so she called her mom to leave work and come and take them all to the ER. At some point, Skylar whispered to Lance to get rid of the phone by smashing it. Skylar told the same hunting story to the ER nurse. Skylar's dad came to the hospital with Skylar's younger brother in tow, but he said he had some errands to do and wanted Skylar to take his brother home with him. So his dad dropped the two of them off at his truck, which he had left at Veronica's house, and him and his brother picked Lance up, and the three of them went to McDonald's. They then drove to an alley near the McDonald's, and Skylar told Lance to throw the knife that he had used and Hannah's cell phone case in the dumpster. But he changed his mind about that seconds after the items had landed in the dumpster, and he ordered Lance to get them back. Fortunately, or unfortunately, he was only able to find the knife, and the cell phone case was lost in a heap of discarded food and paper. Skylar then drove Lance back to home, dropping him off, and took his brother to visit their mom for a bit. They then decided to go back to their dad's place, and on the way, Skylar casually told his brother what he and Lance had done that afternoon, even imitating the sounds of Hannah had made while dying for his benefit. They stopped at an abandoned farmyard and tossed the knife Lance had retrieved from the dumpster earlier. Later that night, back at Veronica's, Lance went back to her house and they went into her bedroom to talk. Lance confessed to Veronica about what they had done that day. He asked her if she remembered the conversation about Halloween, otherwise known as Project Zombify. He told her that him and Skylar had gone to Hannah's and Skylar had stabbed Hannah to death. He said that Hannah had let Lance into the house and that Skylar had snuck in behind him and put a sweater over her face before stabbing her, and that Hannah had tried to call 911, but Skylar had taken her phone. Veronica would only admit what she had learned from Lance on the second day of trial. In her initial statements, she denied knowing anything about the murder. Meanwhile, Hannah's dad arrived home from work and felt immediately that something was wrong. The house just felt off somehow. Too quiet, maybe. He found Hannah at the foot of their bed in the master bedroom, crumpled on the floor and stained head to toe in blood. Despite his grief, shock, and pain, which I think none of us can fully grasp, he knew Skylar had been involved. Unfortunately, Hannah's parents would learn by the medical examiner that Hannah had not died quickly. She suffered a number of stab wounds to her upper body, including defensive slashes on her right forearm, on her hands and wrists. She also had been stabbed in the neck and in her mouth. The medical examiner found that her cause of death had been a stab wound to the head that nearly severed her spinal cord. It wasn't too hard for investigators to put the pieces of the puzzle together and arrest both Skylar and Lance and charge Skylar with first-degree murder and Lance with second. They had text messages and enough physical evidence to bury both of them. In January of 2015, Skylar pled guilty. Justice Jennifer Pritchard decided that despite the fact that Skylar was only 16 at the time of the murder, he would be sentenced as an adult due to the seriousness and detailed planning of the crime. Justice Pritchard said in her decision that although Skylar has made some statements indicating remorse, they are undetermined by other persuasive evidence to the contrary. In particular, he clearly does not appreciate how his actions have caused unimaginable suffering for Hannah's mother. As reported at page 16 of the PSR, Skylar does not believe the mother is hurting too badly as he believes she has been drinking and partying. Objectively, this is an extraordinarily indifferent and insensitive thing for Skylar to have said. Sadly, he does not appear to understand it. Skylar Prockner was sentenced at the age of 19 on July 5th to life imprisonment with a 10-year parole and eligibility period. Despite pleading guilty, Skylar wasn't ready to accept the punishment imposed and tried to appeal, but that was squashed. He is eligible for parole in 2025. In February 2017, Lance also pled guilty but was sentenced as a youth. During his hearing, he admitted that he had told so many versions of his story that he had mixed up the truth with his lies, and admitted in court that he knew exactly what was going down, including with Project Zombify. His initial statements that he had tried to talk him out of the murder were lies. Quote, "I wanted to help get her back for causing him months of anguish and pain," end quote. He said that he had watched the murder go down, but said that he was frozen in fear and hadn't been able to move. He refused to look at photos of the Crown tried to show him of Hanna's body, and also tried to show him a selfie that Lance and Skylar had taken only 1.5 hours after murdering Hanna. He had gone to school the next day on the guise of consoling Hanna's friends about her death, but later that same day texted his brother bragging about Hanna being dead. He admitted he had faked a suicide attempt while in custody to get transferred to another facility, and that he didn't think about the consequences of his actions and didn't think he would get caught. Then, in a surprise statement, admitted to the court that at the time of the murder, he had in fact wished Hanna dead. In a psych report done by Dr. Damon Harridan, he said of Lance that he was upset how the case against him was unfairly built and how, although he is charged with second-degree murder, the Crown is going for the same sentence as a primary offender, which he considers as an unfair process. Lance stated that he was trying to support his friend who was grieving from the loss of the relationship with the victim through some of his friend's ideas, but he did not think it would lead to the outcome of a loss of life. Lance, whatever his real name is, was given a 7-year sentence under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, which is the max that he could have received, and has to serve at least 4 years of those incarcerated. Even if he was forced to serve his full sentence, which I highly doubt he was, he is out by now and still in his 20s.